this conversation that always goes wrong is people forget that guns are just things, neither good nor bad. And forgetting that, it seems to me, highlights one of the ways in which this current debate shows the bankruptcy of liberal thinking. There are two items in particular. One of them relates to what we were just talking about, the fact that guns are not good, they're not bad, they're just things, they're tools, they're pieces of equipment. A car isn't good or bad. I mean, basically, it depends on how you use it. No, I don't believe that cars are evil. I will even go this far. I don't even believe that trains, and people know how I feel about light rail and new light rail projects, but there can be very nice trains. I mean, Thomas the Tank Engine is very good. Okay, seriously, older train systems can do a good job. The trains themselves are not good and bad. It all depends on context. It depends on how people use it. Equipment isn't good or bad. One of the problems with liberalism is they're always looking for material solutions to what are basically spiritual problems. Answer? The entire slum clearance movement, the movement to provide public housing in the 1950s and 60s, was a full-out disaster because what they were looking for is a materialistic solution to what was at its very core a deep spiritual, personal, individual, human problem. In other words, the idea was that you were going to be actually changing people's lives by changing their physical circumstances. They wouldn't live in rundown older homes. Now they'd live in these beautiful new high-rises that were built in places like the Robert Townsend homes or the Cabrini Green projects in Chicago or any number of big housing projects with both government money. And it turns out that taking people out of the slums and putting them into housing projects didn't work because the slums were inside. They had to do with human deficiencies. And a simple materialistic solution to the problem of bad neighborhoods only made worse neighborhoods. And it's pretty well known that housing projects, because they concentrated people who were helpless and dependent and people who were taking things from the government, housing projects ended up being a complete disaster. Now, at least, when they still do government housing, they're trying to mix in with some of the people who are getting subsidized, getting free stuff from the government, people who actually work. That's one problem with the liberal side of the gun debate, is looking for a material, physical, thing-related solution to what is at its very core a people problem. There's another aspect of this, which is the worst aspect of liberalism, of all of them, is this idea that we're going to help you, and we're going to help you, because that's what we want to do. We're helpful people. We're compassionate people. We want to help, but how? By showing you exactly what you should do and ultimately forcing you to do what you should do. Liberals believe that government and elite thinking is better for people than their own inclinations. That's the very essence of why they like a bigger government and higher taxes. They think that government can make a decision better about how to spend the money that you earn than you can. All President Obama's talk about investments. We have to invest here. The idea being the government can invest best. Don't talk about private investors. Don't talk about private decisions. You have to count on the government. It was a terrific exchange on MSNBC. And one of the things that is frustrating to me is a lot of the people they're putting on TV right now to defend the conservative position on this are just bad and embarrassing often. Look, let me just say, we should be able to answer the question, does the government have a right to deny people private ownership of tanks? The answer is yes. Or machine guns. Or bazookas. Or rocket-propelled grenade launchers. That's not what we're talking about here. It really isn't what we're talking about. There's nothing absolute about the Second Amendment. And this issue of where are there reasonable limits was brilliantly argued of the people who I've seen in some of these TV clips defending the Second Amendment. This guy's the best. I don't know him, but his name is Eric Pratt. He's representing Gun Owners of America. And he was making the point with Andrea Mitchell on MSNBC. Yeah, this really is an important personal right.
The president, he quoted from the Declaration of Independence saying that all men are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. And that's a very important concept of inalienable rights, because whether it's the right to vote, right to sit behind a microphone, or the right to choose how I'm going to protect myself, all those rights cannot be infringed as the Second Amendment.
Well, they can be infringed because the First Amendment is infringed. I have to obey all sorts of regulations from the FCC. There are things that we can't say in a crowded theater. So every right also carries with it responsibility.
What's interesting about that, though, is we don't gag people before they go into the theater. We punish the lawbreakers. And in the same way, we would argue, punish those who abuse the right, but don't gag law-abiding citizens before they exercise their right. We shouldn't be registering them like sex offenders like they are in New York. We shouldn't be in any way impeding them if they have not committed a crime.
I think that's brilliant, and that's exactly right. A part of what people on the right feel so indignant about regarding this entire discussion is the attempt to demonize gun owners, to say that people who choose to protect themselves and their families with firearms, or people who just enjoy collecting firearms, and maybe you choose not to have guns because, like Nick Krustoff, you just think they're disgusting and they're dangerous, and why would anyone want them, and why do you need them? So don't get them. But why is it you want to impact your neighbor? Don't tell me that it's to keep myself safe from my neighbor. Your neighbor's not a threat. If your neighbor's a threat, you've got a bigger problem. The gun doesn't make him a threat. The neighbor makes the gun a threat. It's not a people problem. It is a people problem. It's not a thing problem. See, this is very, very basic, and it simply seems to me illustrative of what the left does. We know best. You don't get to decide how you transport yourself. We're going to take your money and pay for public transit. Never mind that nobody wants to use it. We know best. Government shouldn't presume to know best how you can spend your money. The only basis for restricting the sale of something is that if it is truly dangerous to you or to other people. And the idea that a gun in the hands of somebody who knows how to use it, who has no history of mental illness, who has no history of violence, the idea that gun is in itself dangerous or a bad thing or negative to society is preposterous. Preposterous. And part of what is going on here, Victor Davis Hanson had a very good column today, and VDH is spot on. This is classic Obama. One of the things he does, and you could say this is a third loathsome tendency of liberalism, is try to divide people into good guys and bad guys. And of course, it's always conservatives who are the bad guys. For instance, it's the hardworking 98% and the evil 2%ers who don't want to pay their fair share and aren't working hard, and they aren't doing anything. They're bad people. They're not just people who've been a little bit successful and built a business. They're bad people. They're not paying their fair share. If you talk about, for instance, it's the issue of women's rights as the left defines it. Women's rights as the left defines it means we know best. We will tell you what kind of insurance you have to buy. You are only allowed to get insurance that gives you full coverage for birth control. What if you don't want it? Too bad. You have to pay for the fact that everybody else gets the same coverage because we know best. We know best what you should have, what you should do. This is the impulse behind liberalism. And the impulse to divide people on that issue of insurance and contraception and women's rights. It's all the evil men who want to take away women's basic rights, and they want to deny you your access to your fundamental reproductive rights, and versus people who just want a little tolerance and liberty. It's that kind of division and demonization that really does help to poison our political discourse. 5 minutes after the hour on the Michael Medved Show. One of the problems with so much of the so-called gun debate is that in addition to everything else, it ends up degenerating usually into battling statistics. Well, this statistic shows this statistic show that. I think the better statistics by far are on our side. But having said that, I don't think it's the right way to fight this out, to actually come to some kind of an agreement. The right way is to say, look, every American gets to make choices for himself and for his or her own family. The only exception to that is that if the choice that you make ends up harming your neighbors. I do not believe that you can make a plausible argument that the decision of the Smith family to purchase and maintain and to own a gun in any way detracts from the safety, security, well-being, happiness, pursuit of happiness of the Jones family living next door. Maybe the Jones family doesn't want a gun. Maybe it does. Up to them.